Hi, I'm Gianna. Today, I'm going to tell you my story. But before I continue, please share, and subscribe to hear more stories like this. Marco was everything I thought I wanted. Handsome, successful, charming, when he wanted to be. We met at my cousin's wedding 3 years ago. He asked me to dance, and I still remember how he looked at me like I was the only person in the room. Marco, you're stepping on my dress. I laughed as we swayed to the music. Sorry, beautiful. I'm just distracted by those eyes, he replied, his smile reaching all the way to his eyes. Is that your go-to line with all the girls? I teased. Only the ones worth remembering. He spun me around. And something tells me I'll be remembering you for a long time. Things moved quickly after that. 6 months in, we moved in together. Babe, I'm home, I called out, dropping my bags by the door of our new apartment. Marco appeared from the kitchen, wine glasses in hand. Welcome home, to our home. I still can't believe we did this, I said, taking the glass. Believe it. This is just the beginning for us, he said, clinking his glass against mine. To us. To us, I echoed. The first red flag came about a month later. I was running late for dinner with his colleagues. Where have you been? Marco hissed when I finally arrived at the restaurant. We've been waiting for 20 minutes. I'm so sorry, I whispered. Traffic was terrible, and then I couldn't find parking. Save it. He cut me off. You made me look bad. Later that night, he continued the argument. Do you know how important these people are to my career? He said, throwing his keys onto the counter. Do you even care? Of course I care, I said. It was just one of those days where everything went wrong. You know what? Just forget it, he sighed. But next time, try to be on time. First impressions matter. I told myself it was just stress from work, but the bad days became more frequent. He'd snap at me for the smallest things, leaving a cup in the sink, buying the wrong brand of coffee, talking too much when his friends were over. Seriously? Do you have to tell that story to everyone we meet? He asked after his friends left one night. What story? I asked, confused. The one about how we met. You sound desperate, like you're trying to convince everyone we're this perfect couple. I was just making conversation, I said, hurt by his words. Well, it was embarrassing. Just let me do the talking next time. Despite these moments, there were still good days. One evening, he came home with a small velvet box. What's this? I asked as he handed it to me. Open it and find out, he said, smiling. Inside was a beautiful engagement ring. Gianna, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me, he said, taking my hand. Will you marry me? Tears filled my eyes. Yes, of course, yes. The first time I met Marco's parents was 2 months after our engagement. His mother, Mrs. Russo, was quiet and reserved. His father, Victor, was loud and opinionated. So, you're the girl who finally got my son to settle down, Victor said, looking me up and down during dinner at their house. I guess I am, I replied with a nervous laugh. She's quite a catch, isn't she, Dad? Marco said, squeezing my hand under the table. We'll see about that, Victor grunted. A pretty face doesn't make a good wife. Victor, please, Mrs. Russo said quietly. What? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking, Victor snapped. A man needs a woman who knows her place. I noticed how Mrs. Russo flinched at his words, how she kept her eyes down for most of the dinner. I saw how Marco watched his father, seeking approval in every conversation. After that dinner, things changed. Marco became more controlling, more like his father. You're wearing that? He asked one morning as I was getting ready for work. Yes, why? I glanced down at my outfit, a pencil skirt and blouse. It's a bit much, don't you think? You don't need to try so hard to get attention. It's just a normal work outfit, Marco. If you say so, he shrugged. I just don't want other guys getting the wrong idea. My sister, Elena, was the first to notice something was wrong. You've been canceling on me a lot lately, she said during one of our rare lunch dates. Everything okay? Yeah, just busy with work and wedding planning, I said, avoiding her eyes. Are you sure that's all? You seem different. Different how? I don't know. Quieter. You check your phone every 5 minutes like you're afraid of missing a text. Gianna, is Marco good to you? Elena asked directly. Of course he is. He's just under a lot of pressure at work right now. That's not what I asked. I'm getting at the fact that you never hang out with your friends anymore, that you always have an excuse for why you can't make family dinners, that you apologize for everything, even when nothing's your fault. You're reading too much into things, I insisted. Maybe, Elena conceded. But if something's wrong, you know you can tell me, right? The Thanksgiving dinner happened 8 months into our engagement. Marco was hosting at our apartment. His parents, my sister, and my best friend Sophia were all coming. Everything needs to be perfect, Marco said that morning. My dad's really big on Thanksgiving traditions. Don't worry, we've got this, I assured him, already stressed from cooking since dawn. As dinner continued, Victor started asking about wedding plans. So who's making the decisions for this wedding? He asked. We both are, I answered. We want it to represent both of us. Is that right? Victor raised an eyebrow. In my experience, women turn weddings into circuses if you let them. Right, Diane? He nodded to his wife. Mrs. Russo just nodded, her smile not reaching her eyes. Gianna seems very sensible, she offered quietly. That's what they all seem at first, Victor laughed. No offense, Gianna, but a man needs to keep a firm hand on these things. Actually, I said, feeling a surge of courage, I think partnerships work best when both people have equal say. The table went silent. I could feel Marco tensing beside me. Equal say? Victor repeated, his tone mocking. That's cute, but in the real world, someone needs to be in charge, and it sure as hell isn't going to be the woman. That's a pretty outdated view, Sophia spoke up. No, I want to hear what my future daughter-in-law thinks about a man's role in marriage, Victor insisted, his eyes challenging me. I think mutual respect is more important than who's in charge, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Respect is earned, Victor said dismissively. And in my house, I earned it by making it clear who wore the pants. By making Mrs. Russo afraid of you? The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Gianna, Marco warned under his breath. What did you just say? Victor's face darkened. I'm sorry, I didn't mean... No, you said my wife is afraid of me. Is that what you think? Victor's voice rose. Dad, she didn't mean anything by it. Marco tried to intervene. Is this the kind of disrespect you allow, Marco? Victor turned on his son. Is this how she talks to you too? No, sir, Marco said quickly. Because if it is, you need to set her straight right now. Gianna, apologize to my father, he ordered, his voice hard. For what? Saying what everyone can see? I asked, shocked by his demand. Apologize, now. Marco's eyes were cold in a way I'd never seen before. When I didn't immediately comply, Marco stood up suddenly. In one swift movement, his hand connected with my face, sending me stumbling back. I heard the crack before I felt the pain, my nose breaking under the force of his blow. There was a moment of complete silence, then chaos. Sophia screamed. Elena rushed to my side. Blood dripped onto the white tablecloth. That's how you do it, son. Victor nodded approvingly as I clutched my face in shock. What's wrong with you? Elena shouted at Marco, helping me to my feet. We need to get her to a hospital. She pushed me too far, Marco said, but I could see the panic starting to set in. Gianna, I'm sorry, I didn't mean... Don't touch her, Sophia warned, stepping between us. This is between me and my fiancé, Marco insisted. Not anymore, it isn't, Elena said, already dialing on her phone. I'm calling the police. I spent that night in the emergency room. Marco kept calling and texting, alternating between apologies and accusations. I blocked his number. Do you want to press charges, Miss Romano? Detective Mills asked at the hospital. I don't know, I stammered, still in shock. You should, Elena said firmly. What he did was assault. She's right, Detective Mills added, and it rarely stops at just once. He's never hit me before, I said. though even as I spoke, I remembered all the times he'd grabbed my arm too hard. The physical abuse might be new, but was there other controlling behavior? Detective Mills asked gently. I found myself nodding, tears spilling down my cheeks. File the report, I said finally. I want to press charges. Marco was arrested and released on bail. The calls from unknown numbers didn't stop. The messages from his friends calling me a liar, saying I'd provoked him. I can't believe you're doing this to him, his friend Tom cornered me outside my workplace one day. He broke my nose, Tom, I said, trying to push past him. He made one mistake. You're going to destroy his whole career over one mistake? It wasn't just one mistake. It was the culmination of a pattern, I said. Now please, leave me alone before I call the police. You know he loves you. Tom tried one more time. He's miserable without you. Good, I said simply, and walked away. I reached out to Mrs. Russo, not expecting her to agree to meet me, but she did, at a quiet cafe far from her neighborhood. Thank you for seeing me, I said, noticing how nervous she looked. Victor thinks I'm at my sister's, she explained. I don't have much time. I just wanted to understand. How long has it been like this for you? Mrs. Russo's eyes filled with tears. 35 years of marriage. 35 years of walking on eggshells. Has he ever... I couldn't finish the question. Hit me? She nodded slowly. Many times, especially in the early years. Less now. He doesn't need to anymore. And Marco saw this growing up? Victor called it teaching him to be a man, Mrs. Russo said bitterly. I tried to protect him, but... She trailed off. I failed him, and now he's failed you. It's not your fault, I said, reaching for her hand. No, but I stayed. I showed him that this was acceptable. She squeezed my hand. You're doing the right thing, Gianna. Don't back down. She also revealed something crucial. Victor's business dealings weren't entirely above board, ethically questionable tax schemes he was paranoid about people discovering. I don't just want Marco to face consequences for what he did to me, I told my lawyer the next day. I want to take down the whole toxic system that created him. The day before Marco's trial, I invited several key people to meet me. Marco's business partners, the head of the charity where Victor sat on the board, and a local journalist. I also invited Mrs. Russo, though I didn't expect her to come. Thank you all for meeting me, I began. I know you're wondering why I asked you here. If this is about the assault case, we really shouldn't be discussing it before the trial, one of Marco's partners, David, said uncomfortably. This isn't about the assault, not directly, I clarified. It's about the kind of men Victor and Marco Russo really are and the business practices they've normalized. I'm talking about a pattern of behavior that goes beyond how they treat women, I said, pulling out a folder of documents Mrs. Russo had secretly provided. I'm talking about how they cut corners ethically in their business. The room fell silent as I laid out what I knew. How Victor had pressured employees to falsify timesheets, how he deliberately underbid contracts, how he'd threatened anyone who questioned his methods. These are serious allegations, David said, looking through the documents. They're more than allegations, a voice said from the doorway. Mrs. Russo stood there. They're facts, and I should know. I've been typing up his correspondence for 30 years. By the time we finished talking, David was promising an internal audit, Patricia was reconsidering Victor's position on the charity board, and the journalist was taking notes. You know this will get back to Victor, Mrs. Russo said after the others had left. I'm counting on it, I replied. Are you going to be okay? Actually, yes, she smiled. I've been putting money aside for years, just a little each month. I have enough to start over somewhere else. With the photographic evidence of my injuries, the testimony of Elena and Sophia, and my own statement, Marco was convicted of assault. He received a suspended sentence and probation. But the real consequences came outside the courtroom. The business audit revealed enough problems to make several clients pull their contracts. The charity removed Victor from the board. The local paper ran a story about the culture of intimidation at Russo Construction. Within 6 months, Russo Construction had lost so much business they had to downsize dramatically. Victor's reputation was in tatters, and Mrs. Russo, after filing for divorce, moved to Arizona to be near her sister. I ran into Marco a year later at a coffee shop. He looked different, thinner, less confident. "Gianna," he said, his voice hollow, "you destroyed my family." "No, Marco," I corrected him calmly. "Your family destroyed itself. I just refused to be another casualty." "I loved you," he insisted. "It was one mistake." "It wasn't about love. It was about control," I said. And it wasn't one mistake. It was the inevitable result of years of toxic behavior that you and your father thought was normal. "The business is barely surviving," he said bitterly. "Dad had to sell the house. Mom left him. Are you happy now?" "I'm not happy about anyone's suffering," I told him honestly. "But I am happy that your father can't hurt your mother anymore. I'm happy that you can't hurt anyone else like you hurt me. And I'm happy that I'm free." As I walked away from Marco for the last time, I felt nothing but peace. I'd rebuilt my life on my own terms. I'd gone back to school for my MBA. I'd even started dating again, slowly, cautiously, but with hope. My story isn't unique. Thousands of women endure what I did, or worse. The difference is I found my voice. I found the strength to say no more. And if I can do it, anyone can. So I ask you, if you were in my shoes, would you have exposed the Russo family's secrets, or would you have been content with just the legal consequences for Marco? What would your revenge have looked like?